We are going to get started with our evening. I would like to invite Commissioner Baca to the front of the room just to give us a welcome and get us started.
Thank you, Dr. Hill. Can you hear me, everyone?
Yes.
Thank you all for being here. From the bottom of my heart on this very hot July evening, and we really appreciate you participating because this is the second in a series of community dialogues about something that is so very important to our community, but a lot of people go, how do I fit in? You know, that kind of a thing. So I want to give one little quick statement about myself. I'm Barbara Baca. I'm the Bernalillo County Commissioner for District 1. So we are actually not in my district here. I'm just south of Paseo del Norte. But I have the whole west side, south of Paseo. I have the North Valley and North Downtown. But all of these things that we're talking about today relate to all of the city of Albuquerque and all of Bernalillo County. Because what we need is an environment within which businesses can grow, they can thrive, and the residents, we can thrive along with them. We can create a good quality workforce that can be employed by new businesses. We can really promote local and small businesses. And all of that is the mix that we're going to be talking about for these next few months. This is really a community-driven process. We have a community steering committee, which I think Dr. Hill is going to introduce you to after I finish here in a minute. But we really do need to have the community engaged in this, because how do we keep our kids here when they graduate from college? Both of my kids have gone away. I want them to come back. They're still very young, in their 20s. But the point is that, you know, when I ran, I talked about the importance in my district. That's public safety, housing, mental and behavioral health, all of those kinds of things, the environment, and the economy, because the economy and good jobs and attacking poverty and all of those things, all, you know, if they say, you know, when the tide rises, all boats rise. Is that how it goes? But we need to think of all of these in concert. So, in closing, the purpose of our dialogue on economic development is Bernalillo County has an economic development policy and process and a department, and Marcos Gonzalez is our director back there. Many of you probably know him. But we have the role of creating incentives for businesses to come into New Mexico, into Bernalillo County. We also have the opportunity to create incentives for local businesses to grow and thrive. And what are those incentives? That's one thing that we really want some ideas on. What can we do to incentivize those kinds of changes in our economy? So really, the door is open for all of you to give us your suggestions on how we do all of those things. And I just want to tell you from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being here tonight, and please let your communities know that this is the beginning of this conversation. This steering committee will be listening to other of these kinds of groups and conversations. They'll be bringing recommendations back to the county commission in the fall, early winter, and then we'll move forward from there. So this isn't the end, this truly is the beginning of, or the continuation of the good work that we're already doing in Bernalillo County. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Commissioner Baca. And very quickly, would the members of the steering committee who are here just please raise your hand so we can acknowledge you? There are folks all around the room from the steering committee who's helping to oversee this community engaged part of, as Commissioner Baca said, a much longer process. So we appreciate you all being here. We appreciate you braving the heat. It feels a little different than normal, right? Again, I just want to make sure and ask if anyone needs translation services. We have some folks here in the room. So please make sure you let us know. And even though Marcos Gonzalez is right there in the room, he's getting ready to be on your screen.
Hello, I'm Marcos Gonzalez, Executive Development Officer for Bernalillo County. Thank you for attending this community dialogue. So why are we here today? The goal of economic development at Bernalillo County is to create an environment for businesses to thrive and improve the quality of life of all county residents. We have organized these community dialogues in response to a request from the Bernalillo County Commission. We want to hear what you think is important related to economic development. Your comments will be used to develop the Economic Development Department's future strategies and programming. They will also guide any amendments that may be necessary to add to our financing policies in order to deliver these community-informed strategies. We appreciate your time and being part of this conversation. We invite you to continue to engage throughout this process by accessing our materials and research on our website, attending other meetings, and completing our stakeholder survey. We look forward to sharing all of this information gathered in this process with our County Commission as well as with you. Thank you.
Been the next hour and a half or so, as Marco said, in several conversations. As Commissioner Baca mentioned, we've had one conversation before on community benefits and on sustainability. Tonight we'll be talking about workforce training and transparency in two different conversations. Before we get to those two topics, the very first thing we're going to do, I'm going to keep these separate, hopefully. The very first thing we're going to do is, if you look on your tables, you each have a little toolkit like this. And what I'm going to, inside your toolkit, you have some blank half sheets. We're going to, our first conversation is going to be you all talking to your neighbors at your table. And what we ask you to do is, there are pens and markers in your little toolkit. So we'll ask you to pull out some of those half sheets. We'll ask you to tell each other your name, what part of the county you come from. We have a couple folks who are not from the North Valley who are here, which is completely wonderful, right? We want folks to engage as much as they can. And then answer the question, what does economic development mean to you, right? So you don't have to write your name on the half sheet. You don't have to write the part of the county that you're from on the half sheet. But we do want to make sure that we capture what economic development means to you, okay? So our very first conversation is going to be that. We'll ask you to grab some of those half sheets out of your toolkit. Make sure you have a pen or a marker. And you're going to have a conversation about 5 minutes or so with the folks at your table. So let them know who you are, what part of the county you're from. And again, we'll ask you to memorialize on that half sheet what economic development means to you, all right? So I'll ask you to go ahead and start that conversation. All right, folks, we'll give you a couple more minutes on this question. And if you filled out your half sheets already, Antonio, this is Antonio. He'll be coming around to pick some of those up from you. All right. If you still have a half sheet we need to pick up. Excellent, thank you.
Education.
And the table's a little bigger than it looks, huh? All right, so we've completed our first conversation, and you'll see over here, pay Antonio no mind, he's the guy behind the Wizard of Oz curtain, putting some things up. But literally what he's going to be doing is just moving some of those of your responses around, looking to see which things look similar, which we do as a thematic analysis, right? We just look for themes that are emerging from your language data. So we're doing that here just to kind of demonstrate how that's done. For the rest of your conversation, all of the information that you provide will also be analyzed in a similar way, right? It won't be done in this room in the next 40 minutes, but it'll go through a very similar process with some computer-aided support, right? With some large language model support. Thank you, sir. And, okay, so we are going to transition now to our first dialogue, which will consist of 2 questions. I'm going to go back. One, just to point out 2 things. One is, while we're in our dialogue, we want to do our best to be active in the conversation, right? That we are as active listening as we are when we're speaking. So we want to practice both active and participatory listening, right? We're fully engaged. We always want to speak and listen with respect. There may be differing ideas at the table, but we want to make sure there's room for all of them. Ask for clarification if you don't understand something, right? If you're in the conversation and you hear something that you don't understand, much rather you try to ask for clarification than to just let it go, and then you feel like you're not part of the conversation anymore, okay? And then if you need help, also in your little toolkit on your tables, there is a red half sheet. Rado, can you grab yours? Yes, there's one. So if you need help from me or Antonio or anyone else, just wave that red card and we will know to attend to you right away. We'll come to your table to figure out what's happening and try to help you out, okay? All right, so our first dialogue will be around workforce training. This is one of the areas we want to make sure there's some feedback and to help inform how this work moves forward in some ways. So you have on your tables a packet like this, which was under your little toolkit. There should be 10 to 12 questionnaires in here with 2 questions on them. We're going to focus on the first question right now first. So we'll ask somebody at your table to grab that and pass those around. And we're going to ask you, and we're going to give you about 20, 25, 30 minutes, right, to be in a discussion in this topic area around workforce training around these 2 questions. The first question is, what workforce training opportunities do you believe are most important for economic development in your area? Right? So we want you all to explore that question. Use your questionnaire sheet to answer that question, each person, and spend a good 5 to 10 minutes on that first one. If you get to the end of that question before, I will make a call to let you know when it's kind of time to pivot to answer the second question. But if your conversation moves on, that's fine too, right? But we want to make sure that you spend enough time in both questions during this period for this workforce training area, okay? Make sense? So I'm going to get ready to just give you a whole block of time for you to be in that conversation at your tables. Please start that conversation now around this question: what workforce training opportunities do you believe are most important for economic development in your area? So nobody's being greedy by taking one and writing your answers on one, right? In fact, that's actually what we want you to do. So, right? Every person should answer on their own sheet. Yeah? Okay. All right. Yes, sir. All right, folks, as you continue to work on that first question, if you haven't started on the second one yet, I want you to start thinking about that second question, which is, from your perspective, what workforce training programs should residents have access to? All right, folks, we're going to give you about 10 more minutes on this topic. About 10 more minutes on this topic. So if you haven't tackled number 2, definitely pivot to that now. Sorry to interrupt your conversation, but the food truck is going to leave in about 10 minutes. So if there was anything you wanted, you have to grab that in the next 10 minutes. Anybody want seconds? That's usually me, but all right, folks, 3 more minutes. So I'm going to encourage you again, if you haven't memorialized your answers on your sheet of paper, please do so. Your filling out those forms are really important for us to know the opinions you're voicing. Before we pivot to the next conversation, I need to ask you all to do something for me. That is the manila envelope that was on your table. If someone would gather all of the answered questions and place them back in that envelope and just put it on the side of your table, and Antonio will come around to pick those up. And then we are going to pivot to our second topic. You can woosah it away. Woosah. Just let that one go. We're going to pivot to a new topic. So our second topic for this evening, we'll spend another 20, 25 minutes in that discussion, another 2 questions for our new topic, which is transparency. So what transparency looks like in economic development to you. So part of the exercise is, as you all are in conversation, that may be something you want to do at your table. I don't actually want to create a working definition of transparency for you that then you adhere to. That may actually limit your voice. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. Just because we want to make sure we're not guiding the answers somewhere that we think they should go, we actually want to make sure we hear your answers. So this time we're going to spend the next 20, 25 minutes or so, and we'll do a report out at the end of this conversation just to hear from each table a little bit what you talked about over the course of both topics. So question 1 in transparency, what does transparency in economic development look like to you? And Q2, what specific practices should be prioritized in our economic development strategies in the interest of transparency? Okay, so just like before, you can start working on the first question, and as you're in your conversations, if the second question becomes apparent, begin to answer that one. If not, I'll give you again a call at about halfway, and if you haven't pivoted to your second question, we'll encourage you to do that then, okay? All right, I'm gonna be quiet so y'all can talk. All right, folks, we have about 10 more minutes in this topic area. So if you haven't started or looked at question 2 yet, want to make sure you begin to incorporate that one into your discussions. About 10 more minutes, and then we'll do some table report outs. All right, folks, about 3 more minutes, and we're going to ask you to bring this conversation to a close. And also ask you to identify someone at your table who'd be willing to spend about a minute reporting out about your conversations over the course of the evening. I just heard somebody get voluntold. All right, folks, we'll ask you to bring your conversations to a close. And we want to do 2 things right now very quickly. One is, if you haven't already done it, and we got a couple tables that should get a gold star because they already did this. Take all of your sheets that has its answers on it, if you would. Hey, and put them back in that manila folder, and we'll come around to get those. Before we start report outs, I want to just make a quick announcement about Commissioner Baca mentioned when we started that there's a series of these dialogues, and they're happening all over the county. So on your tables, there's some information about the next dialogues. You might see there's a little stand-up deal there with some information. You can always go to BernCo.gov to get more information, but there's a lot of information on your tables about the ongoing series of conversations. And you're welcome to attend any of those, right? So, okay. Who were the lucky folks that got tapped to be? I think I saw this table literally go, not it, right? Like, everybody was out. Like, so we'll send around the mic, and what we'll ask, because we're about 10 minutes from finishing, we want to make sure to get you all home on time, but we want to make sure everybody has a chance to let the room know a little bit about what you talked about. So we'll ask, yes, first? Oh, okay. Oh, he's like, I'm still making notes.
Okay, this is table one, best table. So when we were talking about areas of improvement for economic growth and for the development of our workforce, one of the things that we really wanted to talk about is the empowerment of leadership and the empowerment of our communities. And so and I mean, this is kind of the through line for both of our answers, but to grow our communities and to uplift our communities, and like was mentioned before, kind of raising the floor or sea level of our communities to make sure that we are all benefiting. We talked about pathways to union jobs and pathways for trade opportunities. We're seeing, especially in our communities, like an influx in the desire for those kind of vocational jobs. And so providing accessible opportunities for people to gain certification in those areas is something that we thought was very important. And that there is a feeling as though there's an opportunity for growth and the ability for small businesses to stay and thrive. And making sure, I think thriving was really that big idea of, in general, economic development for our table was really centered on thriving versus surviving. And then for that second part of whatever the question was, transparency, is that transparency is accountability. And accountability of many different parts of workforce development in our general communities. We have the business community, we have the government, we have the schools, and all of them and all of us as community members have a role and responsibility in making sure that we are all benefiting from it. It's really easy to point a finger at the businesses, at the education, at the government for not doing something, but all of them are achieving something really, really positive, and there's such good work happening in our communities. And I think starting those conversations from this is what we are doing instead of this is what we're lacking can really help us develop a sense of communal pride as well. So.
Go next. Okay, right?
Get it over with. Is this on? Hello? Okay. So our first question, this particular table weighs a little heavy with union construction trades and apprenticeship. And I felt like we had a really great conversation because we also have some nonprofit community members here and, talking about, of course, registered apprenticeship, pre-apprenticeship. We had one of the nonprofits here talk about digital literacy and other types of job trainings and like the soft skills, getting individuals set up for success. We talked about accessibility and knowledge during school, during high school. So I don't even think we got to the second question because we were like so excited about the first question on that one. And then as far as transparency, we talked about community outreach and education campaigns. We talked about foundational accountability, like so accountability was huge on that one. I think we talked about like having the community needs assessment within the small and local community and ensuring that we're not just bringing in and incentivizing big businesses, but that we're supporting and growing those local small businesses, homegrown businesses, and that we truly maximize the investments that we make in economic development.
Let's give this table a hand. Yeah. Oh, I thought you said no. Like, oh, he got voluntold?
I'm going to put some words into the mouth of my table. But basically, when we were talking about economic development, we kept coming back to sustainability. And I think what it all amounted to was a hand up, not a hand out. So not only for businesses, but also for our community members, the stakeholders, giving them the opportunity to develop themselves, grow, prosper, and become self-sufficient as a business, as a community member, as families, and then providing those opportunities in a sustainable manner. When we were talking about transparency, we really talked about how, kind of along the same lines, if you look at our community as a family, there are certain things that you trust your parents. You hope you trust your parents, and I don't want to call our local leaders our parents, but just to kind of use this analogy, we have to have a certain level of trust in our elected officials, and we have to trust that they're going to tell us what we need to know. And then also, when they make a mistake, that they're going to own up to the mistake and say, hey, here's what exactly happened. So as it comes to transparency, recognizing the fact that we can't know everything in the moment, otherwise development's not going to take place. But then if a mistake is made, we know where our money's going. And we recognize that they are a fiduciary for us and they're good stewards of our funds, and we elected them to do so.
Thank you. Give this table a hand. So I think we have 3 tables left. Yeah. All right. Thank you, sir.
So for us, we definitely kind of leaned into where you all were at too on the workforce training side, the skilled trades. You know, I think our group talked a lot about understanding where supply demand exists. So understanding the current capacity of our programs, but also how to best shepherd people to new opportunities that they might not be aware of. So that looks a lot like skilled trades. Certainly, there's plenty of critical mass of demand for that, but also the software, the digital literacy, and the technical skills too. That is a tremendous underlying current here, especially with the use of AI and those other tools that are embedding themselves in financial services, professional services, manufacturing, and the like. So a pretty good range of workforce training programs in demand. You know, on the second one, part one, we kind of struggled. We couldn't really put a good definition of transparency on paper, so we opted to start with question 2 in terms of if we were to create best practices on transparency, what would that look like? And so what would the practices be that would improve the trust amongst the community? Because we do feel that there is a certain amount of distrust between words and actions. And so creating a cadence of communications with the municipal government, residents, and our economic development partners. And we even talked about kind of a key performance indicator dashboard, you know, putting something that's easily accessible, that shows where the money's going, how the community's investing into different areas of the county, and then being held accountable for really communicating the why behind those investments.
You all ready? All right.
All right. So workforce development, we really took 2 different tacks. One was, what is a shotgun approach? Why are we only looking at bringing in the basic skills, bringing that into the general public, where we can do more specified industry-based training? CNM does a great job with different businesses that want to move here. We can expand that and look at giving more specific skills to our young people, to people who are perhaps looking at a second career. Moving into economic development and transparency, that got a little bit stickier. So I think, if I can speak for the group, yell at me if I'm getting it wrong. Okay. So part of the issue with transparency is lack of knowledge and understanding. And that goes to understanding the economics of our state, the macroeconomics of our state, going into the more mesoeconomics of businesses. From that point, there is also an issue of transparency within our political system. We have politicians who have been in government for a very long time. And we all know that when you're in a position for long enough, you get more secrets and you have more things to hide. So one particular technique could be term limits to reduce those secrets, to get a little bit more turnover at the decision-making level. We're also looking at transparency being not just throwing a bunch of numbers, not just having data that is thrown out raw, but to create an understandable system of economic education that allows our people to understand what's going on economically at the state and local level.
Who's going to get the mic at this table?
All right, I'll do my best. Oh goodness, I don't deserve a round of applause. I didn't do anything. A lot of what we talked about was coincidentally spoken at the other tables. And as far as workforce development, I think we talked about the trades, that being really important. Berenice is working on a program that is fostering like a certification that gets through environmental sustainability jobs that connects with government, which was cool. We talked about what other, we talked about this concept of incentives and how it seems very large businesses are the only ones with the ability to go and obtain incentives. And so is there a way that, smaller businesses, and the definition of small businesses being 50 or so employees seemed kind of ridiculous. And so we thought about, what about a few businesses with a handful of employees? Like what sort of attainable incentives could be made available to them, whether it's an equipment purchase or something, an abatement of sorts that would allow them to hire more people. Like, what does that look like? So we kind of, if I'm missing something, let me know. Our friends are working on a really amazing project in their South San Pedro neighborhood where they're connecting community with schools and getting the children to schools that are less than 1.5 miles or 2 miles? A mile. That transportation services aren't offered, and so they talked about some really cool things they're doing in the alleyways, which, is ultimately workforce development too, training the youth. As far as transparency, that was a little bit harder. We talked about some of the things like the communication of data being made available. We talked about that as well. And we talked about, what else did we talk about? Did everybody else cover?
Community committees formed to select bids.
But you guys all did a wonderful job and better spoken than me.
He just did my job. So it's time to go. I do want to make sure, thank you all, one, for being here. Thank you for providing your voice. It's incredibly important. I have a belief that if we don't have community data for folks to incorporate into their decision-making processes, they don't have a complete set of data, right? So what you've done this evening is incredibly important. I think on your tables, there's a little card with, what's that little thing called? QR code. There's a survey that you can also fill out. So you can go to other dialogues if you like to be in a conversation in another area around another topic. You can also use the QR code to go to a survey that you can fill out, right? And again, there's more information at BernCo.gov. So real quick, as we put together some stuff up here, it mirrors what you all were talking about. When we asked that question of what does economic development mean to you, the one that jumped off the page really is growth, right? Growth, opportunity, stability, sustainability, and education, right? Good workforce development opportunities that create growth also create opportunities for people to learn as new things are coming about in our communities, right? So this and that first question kind of umbrellas, and the other two, I need to get you. Thank you. My arm's not long enough. Really nest under those larger concepts. So we will take this data, we'll do a theming analysis to see what themes emerged again. We'll get that information back to the steering committee. Again, many of the steering committee members are here in the room, and they will use that information to help integrate that into conversations as the county is working on its larger strategies, economic development strategies. All right. Anything, staff, that I missed? Marco?
Just want to say thank you to my team, a little bit, Carolyn Tobias and Monica Roybal for putting all of this together to be able to take in all of your feedback and work with the steering committee on it. So I want to give a big thank you to them.
Yes.
Thank you to our community again for bringing your voice so we could hear it and put it together in our report. And just remember, all of this information will be on our website. And when it culminates in October with the report, we'll have all of the research components, all of the community components will all be bundled there for you to see the final result. And again, scan participate in our survey, our next community meeting, bring a friend, tell them how much fun you had. It's only going to get better. But also follow us on our socials, and please share as well. We're on all of them, LinkedIn, Facebook, the Gram, Blue Sky, I think. I don't know. That really helps to make sure that we're hearing all the voices in the community be part of this. So we greatly appreciate you again taking the time to come out this evening and stay cool. See you later.
All right. Thank you. Commissioner.
Staff, I would just really like to thank our facilitators.
Oh, thank you. Now, ooh, that actually hurt. Thank you very much. And thank you to all of you. Thanks to the AV guys and everybody who's here. Please find your way home safely. Take good care of yourselves.